My name is Garvey Bailey, and I'm sitting here with Michelle Parise. Yay!
Hey.
Whose memoir, Alone, a Love Story, is just hit the streets this weekend, which is so exciting. A story of love and loss and betrayal. It's gut twisting and agonizing, and there's ecstasy and relationships. There's so much. And there's sex and booze and rock and roll. What better? And Michelle, to me, is so many things. She's a mom. She's an award-winning producer, a sister, daughter, friend. She's an athlete. She's a huge thinker. She knows about pain and heartbreak and loss, and she turns it all into beautiful art. I'm so excited. So congratulations, first of all.
Thank you.
The baby is out in the world.
Mm-hmm.
How are you feeling?
I feel pretty great. It feels weird.
How
It's
so?
one of those
How?
things. I guess because, it's been 7 years or just a little bit more than 7 years since I started writing it. And 7 years is a long time.
Mm.
And a lot of things have happened and a lot of things have changed. And so for it to finally be out and be this like physical book in my hand, it's kind of amazing.
It's huge. It's big. I know that this, this is obviously not the book launch you envisioned for it. I ask everyone this. I've interviewed so many people over the last little while, but how are you coping through this weird lockdown phase of ours, this weird time in our collective history?
I'm doing okay. Because I have MS, so the drugs that I take every single day are immunosuppressants, so I have to stay home pretty much because that puts me in the immunocompromised category of people. So I have been pretty much almost exclusively in lockdown for 7 weeks. But luckily I have a big balcony.
Mm-hmm.
And, and I have a partner now, so he's been doing all the groceries and stuff like that, and so it's been okay. And I've been working from home, which for a lot of people, I feel very lucky that I'm able to work from home, but fortunate, but it's also had its challenges.
Yeah.
The commute is nice and short though.
I love that. It took me 2 minutes to get ready to meet with you tonight, so that's good. How are your spirits though? Because I think this does a little bit of a, I think it's wonderful that your book is coming out right now because it does speak to the idea of loneliness and being alone, and we're all in this solitary place. So I just wonder about your own spirits, how you're internally. I know you're doing fine because that's what you do. Yeah. But how are your spirits?
My spirits are pretty okay. I think like everybody, it's been a strange time, right? It's weird to be home all the time, and it's had its challenges, but I'm kind of getting used to it now. And I'm a pretty social person, but I also do like now being alone. So now it's the opposite, that I have basically no alone time because, I live in an apartment with one other person full time, and then Bertie comes here half the time. And when there's all three of us in here, it can be a little crowded.
It gets tight.
But what's been nice is we've really gotten to know a lot of our neighbors.
Right.
There's a lot of hanging over the balcony and talking to people above us and below us, and that's been kind of cool. So I think there are sides.
Good. Yeah. I'm glad. So this is my guess. My guess is that there's a lot of people that are tuning in right now, or who have been eagerly anticipating this book launch because they are also fans of the podcast Alone, a Love Story that came out on CBC. I like so many people, I binged the podcast, but then when I got the book, I binged the book in an even more intense way. You were with me for so long afterwards and during, and full disclosure, Michelle is a good friend of mine, so she has really been with me. And I've been through all these
you
events.
Have heard these stories.
I know these stories. I've lived these stories.
You have lived them, yeah.
Yeah. So even though I knew everything, I was still completely taken by your writing and binging it. So I'm wondering about that.
Cool.
Oh my gosh, Mish, so into it. Your writing is so beautiful. And I wonder about that. You know, you've had the success with the podcast. Congratulations on your silver award at the New Yorks, by the way.
Yeah, thanks.
Yes, amazing.
One award for each season, which is pretty cool.
That's
from the New York festivals, yeah.
Yeah, virtual high five.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, man. So I'm just wondering about that difference between the podcast and then actually getting the chance to write in the way that I'm not sure. Perhaps this is the way you heard it or felt the book. What is that difference? But for those that are listening, that have heard the podcast, what is that difference that they're going to feel in picking up the book and reading it?
I mean, at the end of the day, the truth is it's actually not a lot of difference. I mean, in the sense that as a writer, as I've been told, I have a very clear voice. So like my voice is my voice. And the podcast was, I adapted the podcast from the book,
right?
Like from the original manuscript. Because I started writing it in 2013 and I did the first season of the podcast in 2017. So a huge chunk of it was written. Like most of what's in the podcast was already written, except for some of the stuff that happened after. And I already forgot what you asked. I'm a terrible interviewer.
I'm just asking about the difference between the writing when you pick up your book for the written word as opposed to your voice in my ear.
I think the main difference, there are some extra stories. There are stories that weren't in the podcast. It's definitely in a different order than in the podcast. So, I mean, those are the main differences. And things like, when you adapt something for audio, especially because I was performing it, like I didn't need to say, I said excitedly, you know what I mean? Hopefully,
right.
Hopefully you can hear my.
That's bad radio. That's bad radio.
I felt sorrowful. I wouldn't write that anyway, but yeah. So stuff like that had to come out. A lot of exposition or whatever came out. Definitely truncated or pushed stories together and made them into one story for the podcast. And a ton of stuff was cut out.
Yeah. Well, that's what I think. I think that there's this sense of shimmer and vibrancy in the book that it feels the podcast was visceral in one way. This is something that really you kind of pull your body through in a way that reading does. And I think, the way that reading can immerse you in a way. Like, I'm a fan of podcasts, but when I sit down with a book and can be in it, it's kind of a different beast. It really is.
I hope that that's, originally it was meant to be read. So not by me. So, I know what you mean. There's a different kind of immersion that you get when you read a book. Although I do think, it would be interesting. I think I saw somebody scroll by here say, do you think people would hear my voice if they were fans of the podcast than when they're reading the book? And I would think probably. It's almost like if you watched a movie version of a book and then you go read the book, you can't get Michelle Pfeiffer out of your head or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Michelle Pfeiffer.
Very current. Only the most current references from me.
For sure. Way back in the day. Children, Michelle Pfeiffer was an actress from the did you know that you had book on your hands when you started? Like, when did you know that, yes, this is going to work as a book? Do you remember that moment or that feeling?
I actually do, which is weird because I was drunk all the time back then. No, I mean, it's funny and like we laugh about it, but if you remember me back then, it was a very, very deeply troubling time for me. And I was drunk a lot. And I started writing it when I came back from a trip at the beginning of 2013. And right when I got off the plane, basically, you know, my ex-husband picked me up at the airport. The scene is in there. And then he and Bertie went home to his house. And, you know, when she said, even though she was 5 years old, you know, Mom, I hope you have a really nice night, or something, like just very empathetic way. And I came into the apartment and it was like empty. And I fixed myself a drink, and then I think I fried an egg, you know, and then I was feeling all proud of myself for like, yeah, I can make dinner, which is the headspace I was in at the time. And then I opened my laptop and started writing, which was very different for me. So like I write every single day at work, on a computer, obviously, but that's journalism. And then I've been writing in notebooks my whole life. You know, I'm writing short stories and all that kind of stuff, but longhand. And this was the first time where I opened my computer and just started writing a story, but the story was about me, and it was that exact story. And it's almost unchanged. I still have the original, you know, and it's almost unchanged from what's in the book and the podcast. It was just that story of what it was like to come home to an empty apartment. Anyway, after about the first 10,000 words, so I started writing that, and then I wrote another one and another one, and I was like, I feel like this is something. Yeah. You know, the producer, journalist in me, the editor, was like, I actually, not to toot my own horn or whatever, but I kind of think this is something. And so what I did was I sent it to two people who were both writers. I sent it to Tom Allen from CBC, and he has like 3 or 4 memoirs already out and published. And I sent it to Damon Fairless, who now just had a book out recently, but I didn't really know him that well at the time. And I just sent them a note with the first 10,000 words that said, like, is this something? And their enthusiastic response was like, this is so beautiful. Oh my goodness. I think Tom Allen said something like, this makes my book about divorce look like Sesame Street version or whatever. And they were both like, please, please, please keep writing. Yeah. And so that's when I knew I had something. And so I spent the next 2 years, you know, writing it out. It's something, says someone. Thanks.
It's definitely something. It's definitely something. You know, it's interesting in the book how writing is so obviously a muse for you. Like, writing is its own kind of character in the book. It pops up in so many ways, in so many interesting ways. Like I think about the moment where you're fighting with your husband in the kitchen, your father is over, and he throws the cutting board, the husband throws the cutting board across the room. And the first thing that happens, and I think it's just so interesting that you say this, is that you run upstairs and you're freaked out and you pick up a pen and a paper and write it. You write about it. And I just thought that, you know, it feels like a confessional. It feels like therapy. It feels like all of those things. And has it always been that thing for you, the writing? Like, even before all of this kind of hit?
Oh yeah, 100%. So like ever since I was the littlest kid, I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of notebooks. And one thing I liked to do a lot was write short stories about the people in my life or people on the street. And it always just came out in short stories or things that just happened, you know? And so I would write the full dialogue. You know, it's still a memory, but it would be very close to the time that it happened so that hopefully the dialogue is as, and that's why I can be so specific with dialogue in the book. And I feel like okay about that because I have it written down, the dialogue, most of it. So yeah, definitely my whole life. I mean, when I was 11, I think we moved from this really small town out by the airport, Malton. We moved to Brampton, the bustling metropolis from Malton. And I didn't know anybody. It was the summer. Thanks a lot, parents. And so, I was starting a new school in September. So the whole summer long, I was a total latchkey kid, right? My brother and sister were teenagers and they went to work all day and my parents went to work. So I was alone all the time, all summer long, morning, noon, and night. And then I would go to the park and there were all these kids playing who knew each other, but I didn't know anybody. And I would climb up in these trees and just sit there with my notebooks and watch kids. That was some serious Harriet the Spy business. If people know, I love Harriet the Spy. And then I was like, I guess I'm Harriet the Spy. And I would sit up in these trees and write all these stories, like from overheard snippets of conversation stuff. So definitely writing. Yeah. I have a lot of like your life written down and like other people's. My best friend Kim, from when I was like, since I've been 10 years old, she always would say like, I don't need to keep anything because I know Michelle Parise has everything about me.
It's all written down.
I'm an archivist. It's all written down, and I'm the photographer. I got my first camera when I was 8 years old. And so I have all these different cameras and stuff. And so I do have everybody's life documented for them. That's just who I am.
But I think it shows so much in your memoir that the weight and the importance of the written word in your life, but also the weight and importance of creating, of being an artist. It's such an interesting subplot to me.
No, I love that.
Like Thank you. Those parts of it are just so interesting. I know that you when you talk about writing dialogue, I know that Raymond Carver is one of your, and like, I mean, talk about someone, the great American short story writer who writes dialogue like it's happening right beside you.
Yeah. I love Raymond Carver. I don't know how you knew that. You must have done your research.
Sometimes I do research, girl.
That's why you're professional. I love Raymond Carver. I remember my boyfriend when I was like 19, 20, the musician in the book. He had a bunch of Raymond Carver books, and he had what we talk about when we talk about love.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes.
And that was the first collection I read. And then, of course, we also saw them. There was a movie at the time, Shortcuts. I think it was Robert Altman movie. Anyway, with Robert De Niro, not Robert De Niro, the other guy, Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr.
Right.
And there was something, like nothing happens in his short stories, like a lot of the time, right? It's just average
sitting around talking. Yeah.
Very working class perspective. So I think I identified with that. I come from super working class family. Nobody went to university. My sister and I were the first people to go to university. Like I just identified with his kind of almost fly on the wall. Like it's just people sitting around a kitchen table talking. Even if you were to say like, what's your favorite Raymond Carver story? I'm like, I don't know, the one where they're sitting around a kitchen table talking.
Right. Of course.
Because that's how they are. But the thing about short stories that I always loved is that, you start in the middle and you end in the middle. And you don't have to give so much exposition. You don't have to give so much motivation. Like things are just happening and then they stop happening and you don't know what happens next. And I kind of love that because I feel like that's very true to life, right? And so
it's very realistic. It is this kind of realism that his writing, it makes sense. And he had such a tumultuous love life as well, which I think is such an interesting parallel. But
I didn't know that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he was a philanderer.
He was a bad man. Yeah, he would have been
to his first wife. I
Right.
think it was good to the second one. I mean, this is how they are, apparently.
But still, yeah.
I
That
mean, I've
wasn't a
heard.
dig.
Um,
But in
no, that wasn't a dig. I just meant in general. No, really, I did. Also, there's a Canadian short story writer that I love. Her name is Katie Miller. And she had a book of short stories, All Saints, I think it was called. And her short stories also I love for the same reason. But that collection, they're all tied in together.
Right.
They're individual stories, but then you start to see an overall arc, and I loved that.
Yeah.
And in the fall, I was in Windsor at some kind of writers festival. It's not some kind. It was called the Wild Writers Festival, and she was there, but I was too nervous to talk to her. Isn't that weird?
It's not weird at all.
I wanted to tell Katie Miller that I love her and I love her books. Anyway, I love short stories and poetry. Yeah, those are my two favorite things.
And that comes through in the book. It absolutely does. But at the same time that there's the craft of writing, there is this, there's so much in here that you are like, you really are just pulling out your guts for us, the coyotes, to sniff around in. And, it really is. And I just wonder if there was anything that you felt as you were writing, like writing comes so easily and naturally for you. Was there any time when it felt like this is hard? Like this is hard to write down?
Yes. So writing does, I'm sorry, writers who hate when I say this, but writing does come very easily to me. Like it's no problem. Just tell me to write something. I'll be like, yeah, sure, whatever. I can just write. But in 2014, like in the early stages of the book, I was actually being coached by a publisher, by an editor, just because he loved it so much and not for any other reason than that. And he said to me, we need more good stories about you and the husband, because that way the reader will feel the betrayal much more deeply if we have even more of the good stories. And I was like, okay, sure, whatever. And then I was like, oh, good stories.
Oh,
and
hard.
And it was really hard. And first of all, it was hard to think of some more good stories other than the couple that I had written. And then I remember being in the Victory Cafe, long gone, beautiful bar.
Love that bar.
With our mutual friend Ruben. And I was like, man, can you help me think of good times between me and ex-husband? Because he was there. And I think I probably asked you. I asked a bunch of people, like, do you remember good things about, And so I collected all these things. And when I started writing those stories, that was the hardest part of this whole thing. That was the part where I really regressed a lot. Like I super regressed. And I felt like I went right back to the beginning in terms of my emotional state of mind. So if something like writing the bad stuff was okay, I mean, it was mildly cathartic, not really, but I was able to do it with some form of detachment, probably because I had spent anyone who is my friend knows that is all I talks about. I can't believe anyone stayed my friend, but anyway.
We're still here, girl.
Yeah, but so I talked at length about all the bad stuff. And so to confront the good stuff in my marriage and to remember like why I loved being married so much and what I loved about my husband
was hard.
It's 8 years later, and now I just cried again. So there you go. Well, that should tell you that the thinking of the good stuff was that was the hard part.
That was the hard part. But you
made. Jossie, can you get me a Kleenex? For real.
But you made it. You did make it through it, and you wrote it. I keep saying it. You just you wrote it beautifully. And I wonder about. I'm going to ask you a technical question.
Right.
About
so I'll stop crying.
This is my own Jedi mind tricks. The device that you use of going backwards and forwards is also something that usually, because my brain is old, makes me kind of crazy when I'm reading a book, where I'm like, where am I? Who are these people
Oh
now?
yeah,
Oh,
the
I'm in the
non-linear stuff.
past. And now I'm in the future. What's happening? But it was such a striking device. And I wonder about the decision to decide to go, to take us back and forth within, sometimes it's within a page where, or within a chapter where we go, where we're one place, we're with the man with the white shirt and we're in his place and it's great. And then all of a sudden we are in your car with the husband.
Yeah, with the husband. Yeah, the editor of this book, poor Jess Philman, she was like very in favor of it, except for every once in a while she was like, I'm just trying very hard to make this make sense because you have changed time and place like 4 times in, this one little short story. But she never told me to not do that, so that's great. But it was, like just, there was some finessing because my tenses were all over the place and that kind of stuff. I don't know if it really was a decision, like I feel like that's just actually my writing style, but I didn't know. I didn't set out to write a book. So I don't know that I didn't have a style or an idea. I didn't have a arc laid out. I just was writing. I mean, it was all, the original draft of it many years ago was in completely any order. It was just in whatever order I felt like it should go. And that same editor at a different publishing house, he was like, I love this, but it's very impressionistic. It's like impressionistic nonfiction. Flash nonfiction, that's what he called it. And he's like, which is great, but also at the end of the day, this is a journey story. And so like, it kind of does need to be linear. Yeah. And so having to think about it being linear was very hard for me because what I understood, it was really like all over the place. So then actually me and the man with the white shirt, we wrote every single story down on a Post-it note, and then we put them all on one side, one door, what is it, closet door, and then I moved them over to the other closet door to try and put them in order. And then the names that we wrote on those Post-it notes became a lot of the names of the stories later on. But we were I just was like, the bear, and he was like, okay, the bear. And then I was just saying, and so then that helped me to put it in chronological order. But I still wanted to preserve some of the flash forwards and flash backs because I really enjoy the juxtapositions that they create. Yeah. Like where it was necessary, I preserved those. And then where I felt like, I can change this. And then for the podcast, for anyone who's like fan of the podcast, that's a completely different order again. Because we had a different thing to achieve with that. And we had to seed stuff from the in the first season that would really naturally come later, blah blah blah. But in the book, it's mostly linear with still those flashes. That was the longest answer ever. It's a
good answer though. You know what I'm stuck on is that people's minds are going to be blown that you and the man with the white shirt, if anyone, as you get to know him, was there as you were writing this. Like it wasn't like you were hiding from anyone that this was this was happening. It was happening while it was happening. The writing was happening while it was happening.
Absolutely.
Which is it's just wild to me. I don't know why it's wild to me. I don't know. I feel like I think so much. I think about memoir writing as, my mom is like, 90 and almost 90, and she's like, I'm writing I said, Mom, what are you spending your time doing? I'm writing my memoir. It's like, oh, fantastic. That's great. Can you buy me some notebooks from Shoppers Drug Mart. So yeah, so I buy her a stack of notebooks so she can write her memoirs. So I think of memoir writing as looking back at something, like it's
Oh, yeah.
I think of reflection as opposed to it happening as it's happening, which I think is the magic of this book. I think I just nailed it, me.
I think you did.
I think I did. So
yeah. I never really thought of it that way, but for sure. I mean, I think if I had to do it that way, like reflect on it after the fact, I don't think that I would have been able to write it. I mean, I definitely kept notes and went back to my notes a lot. Yeah. And the journalist in me never went away, so I was always fact checking myself also.
Oh, interesting.
Quite a bit. So, and actually, I mean, I'm a very big, like, we could have a whole Instagram live where Michelle's like, let me tell you about fact checking. Right. But I do think that we don't have to fact check for storytelling, which is not true. Right. Because what happened is when I would go back and check something to double check a date or double check something else, I would find a detail in my notes that I didn't remember, because how would I remember? And in fact, my best example of it is the scene that you mentioned earlier, where the husband and I have a fight and he throws the
parsley and the cutting board, yeah. And
the parsley falls everywhere, falling on everyone like green snowflakes or whatever I say in the book. And I didn't remember the parsley. Oh. So in the original draft, it was just like, we have a fight and he like flips he didn't throw it at me or anything. Like, he just flips the cutting board and whatever, and I run upstairs crying to write in my notebooks. And then when I went to check that notebook, it was the parsley. And I was like, this is beautiful. And it had the part where it's like, later we make a joke that our marriage ended over parsley and serviettes. Yes. And I wouldn't have remembered any of that, just if it was like a reflection. I'm sure your mom will do fine, but
that's the thing. Memories are fallible. Our memories are always rewriting themselves. So, you had this secret weapon in the consistency of your writing to use in the execution of your book, which is, I think that's just the coolest thing. And it was your refuge as well. But I know that you have many other things that are a refuge. You are a creative soul. You have music as a refuge, which also shows up as such an incredible muse in Alone. So what were you leaning on music a lot during that time? Does it still those songs that you mentioned, do they resonate in the same way now that you've been through all this and have written it all down?
Yeah, I've always had I think a lot of people do. I mean, the thing about music, especially for me, is it's how they say, like, oh, smell is the sense that brings you memories more than anything. But for me, I do think it's music. Like, I need to hear 2 notes of something and I'm a weepy mess, or I'm right back to being 15, or whatever. And so music is extremely important to me. And in the book, unfortunately, because of rights and all this kind of stuff, I had to take all the lyrics and everything out of the book, which is just how it goes. But everything is music in that book, and there's a lot of Easter eggs. Like, there's song titles and everything, and lyrics in everything. That's just how I am. I don't know. Yeah. I'm a music weenie, as Tom Allen would say.
You are a music weenie. Did I hear also that there was some music that you had to stop listening to while you healed through this terrible, terrible time?
Oh, for sure. I mean, there are some songs that I could not listen to until like 2 years ago, even. Like if Al Green, Let's Stay Together came on, forget it. Like, I couldn't listen to that song. That's like the best song ever. I just couldn't. Like, I just couldn't listen to that song. And then, in the podcast and in the book, Perfect Day by Lee Reed, because that was our wedding song. Like, I would seriously launch myself across the room to be like, oh my God, turn it off. Yeah. Like I couldn't, yeah. But I mean, that kind of stuff definitely has healed. I mean, it hasn't been 8 years.
It has been 8 years, but I mean, it's still, you know, it's still, you give yourself up to this kind of vulnerability that I think is, I talk about vulnerability a lot lately, about vulnerability actually being such a strength. Like being able to give yourself up to it is actually, it's actually a kind of superpower, and it can be the kind of superpower that touches other people, that helps other people, that kind of vulnerability. But on the flip side of vulnerability is fear. The flip coin to it is real fear. And in giving yourself so much, giving of yourself so much, and being so vulnerable in writing this, did fear come into it? Was there any aspect of putting this out into the world that you felt, like you might shit your pants?
Pardon?
Am I allowed to say that?
I don't know. So I just like, first of all, to say I have not sworn once, which I cannot believe. Everyone, like, not to say everyone asks me this, but like, that is the main, like, people are like, you're so brave all the time, or like, how could you just do all that? And the thing is, I did not feel afraid, really. No.
Really?
I feel like I mean, I was only afraid of hurting people that I wrote about.
That's a real fear.
Yeah, so that would be the only one. And I took such care. Like, I agonized over every single thing I wrote about someone else. And there's plenty of stuff, I didn't put in about my ex-husband, because I felt so strongly like it's not my story to tell. His story, I could only tell my story of the impact. I mean, obviously I am telling his story also, but not really, right? Like, there's nowhere in there where I'm saying, I think this is exactly how it happened, and I have the absolute truth of everything. You know what I mean? It's definitely my side of things. But I did want it to be like, I wanted to say nothing that people didn't already know. So there's nothing about him in that book that a lot of people didn't already know. I did not feel that I didn't want this at any time to be like, it wasn't a revenge project. It wasn't a, unearth other people's dirty secrets kind of thing. Like, so I was very conscious of that. But of course, you never know that you'll still upset people. Right. I was worried about what my friends would think, because people in general are much more private than I am.
Yes.
Right?
This is true.
Even if I didn't write the book and make the podcast, I am the kind of person that like walks around and tells people everything about me. And like, I'm a very emotive, real talk person. Like, I hate small talk. I just want to get right down to it with people. But not everybody is like that. And so I did have that fear that even though I wasn't saying anything bad about a person, that they would still not want me to talk about them. Yeah. And then of course I was afraid for my kid. Like, that one day she would grow up and hate my guts. But that was a risk I was willing to take. That she wouldn't.
Why do you think that she would hate you?
Even as a young, she's older now, but even when she was young, she's very different than me. She's a very private person. And not very emotive like I am. And so I think that here I am telling this story for the whole world about her mom and her dad and about her. And she doesn't even like it if I'm like, hey, Garvey, you should have seen what she did the other day. And she would be like, oh, stop it. Don't tell a story about me. Like, she doesn't even like that. Right. So I was very, very, very concerned, that she's going to become 16, 17 or whatever. And just be like, how could you do this to dad or me or us? Or I have no idea. And so I had a really big, long talk with her before the podcast came out. But of course, at the time, she was only 10, but still. And I just said, like, one day you might hate me for this. And oh, I can never hate you, Mom. And I was like, well, because you're 10. And a
Yeah.
10-year-old can't imagine ever hating their mom, right?
Right.
But like, just get to 13, 14, and then you remember, then you know, right? And so I said, well, so what I ended up doing with her was just appeal to her altruistic side. Like, she has a lot of empathy for
Right.
others. And I said, Bertie, like, I have a way of writing that really helps people. I don't know
Yeah.
why, but there's
Yeah.
something about the way I write that people really respond to, that
Mm-hmm.
people really say helps them. And so this is why I'm compelled to do this. Like, I need to be able to speak for people who can't speak or who can't articulate their grief or their things. And I told her very clearly, I said, there are things in there where I say I hated being pregnant with you, where I hated being a new mom to you, but that doesn't mean I hate you or hate being a mother. I just really did not like having a baby. Like, that's the truth of it. I really didn't like being pregnant or, you know, and I said, and there's stuff about your dad and there's terrible stuff about me, like a lot of embarrassing stuff. And like, this is, so we had that conversation.
Mm.
And we've had it again now that the book is coming out and she's 3 years older, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
That part I have a fear.
Yeah.
But I saved all the hundreds of letters of people from all over the world. So like, if ever she does hate me, I'm going to be like, here you go. Here's a stack of people who said I changed their life, or not changed their life, but like helped them.
For sure. That's huge. That's huge. That's like saying that I use my superpower, which is this vulnerability and being able to express it for something that is good, that has given something to so many. And, you know, one of these days after you've written maybe your fifth novel, your fifth work, and I get to interview you again, and Bertie is at a different stage, I think that this whole idea of that superpower will have blossomed in such an even more profound way. Yeah. I'm really looking forward to that. I think that she's gonna get it, you know. Oh my gosh, I can't believe we're running out of time already. What is happening?
There's no time on the internet.
We can just keep going forever. Forever, ever.
Forever, ever.
But those other than Bertie and how has everyone else reacted to being a part of this vibrant world of yours? I mean, the husband, the ex-husband.
Mm-hmm. He's always been quite supportive of it. I mean, I don't think he's crazy about it. Like, like, I think he'd rather I didn't do this, but but he's been so supportive of it. And you know, I remember after he heard the whole first season of the podcast, he said, you know, I listened to the whole thing, and I was like, whoa. And and he, you know, and he said like it was beautiful and it made him laugh and it made him cry and it made him super pissed at me and he, you know, he said it was like the best thing that I think you've done, and you've done so many beautiful things. And I'm like, he was proud of me. And I knew he would be. Like, people were worried that he would freak out or something, but I'm like, there's no way. Like, I'm not doing, it's not a revenge tale. Like, it's just not, I think, what people.
It's not that. No.
Yeah. And so he was quite supportive, and, you know, and all through it, we've had talks. Like, okay, how are we going to talk to Bertie about the book when the book comes out? And, you know, so that's great. That helps. I would have done it anyway, I think, because I do feel like I was very even generous to him in the telling. And yeah, so he was fine with it. The man with the white shirt was pretty good about it. I mean, there are things that, of course, where he remembers differently than I do, or where I'm not explaining, you know, where he was coming from, but he also knows that that's not my job to explain his side, you know.
That's right.
And so everyone's been pretty good, and I think all my friends have been okay with it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. The man with the white shirt can write his own memoir if he wants to tell his side. There's lots of pens and lots of paper in the world. Can I get you to read something short for me?
Sure.
Page 45 is...
Guys, I put my glasses on to do
You look so cute in your glasses, though.
I finally, this is the first time in my life I got reading glasses.
You look good. Don't poke yourself in the eye, though. Please don't hurt yourself.
All right, page 45.
Yes. And it is love. Love is torture.
Yeah. Okay. I grew up thinking love was torture. Love was passion. Love was drama. I watched my parents fight in spectacular telenovela fashion. I saw my aunt and uncle throw plates and punches while my little cousins and I hid under the kitchen table. These couples loved each other fiercely. I'd sit at the top of the basement stairs long after I should have been asleep, watching them dance close and call each other darling. A spark in their eye, an affectionate pinch of a bum, a laugh like a teenage girl. So that's what love's always been to me, wild and sweeping, changing from intense anger to soft care at any moment. Of course, my parents and most of my aunts and uncles all got divorced eventually, but by then it was too late. I'd sponged it all up. It's part of my very blood. Love is infuriating, but worth every fight. Which brings me here, to a place where love is only real if it can if it can rage like a bonfire and also comfort like a fireplace. It's both at once, the pain and the warmth. It's why my heart is always cranked to maximum.
Oh,
maximum, man. Michelle, all the time.
Michelle to the max. Your family figures so prominently in the book. The relationships with your dad and your brother and extended family in Italy. And was there, but I also know that your family is fiercely passionate the way that you are. And I wonder how they're feeling about this explosion of you-ness out into the world, which is also an extension of them out in the world.
Yeah. Actually, they're not all so passionate and like blah as me. And my brother is like that also. But my dad and my sister are more not reserved, but yeah, I don't know. They're different. They're not as so. I think it was definitely hard for my dad. And again, I had to like have a really big heart-to-heart with him at the beginning before the podcast was released. And again, for the book. Like, he's so proud of me and supportive, but, I don't think he's going to read it.
That's okay. And that's okay. Have your feelings about love shifted?
My brother just said hi.
Oh, hi. Oh, there he is.
He says he loves me. I love him.
Yeah, I'm sure he does love you. Yeah, those feelings of what love is that are part of your DNA almost. Did going through what you've been through, which is it can shake a lot of foundations. Has it shifted the way that you think about love and being loved?
Yeah, that has shifted a bit, I think, for sure. I mean, I think when you go through a betrayal or, well, at least I don't know what other people do, but when I went through it, it really like shook my whole sense of reality, right? And that included my own sense of self. So I always said like, oh, I had like 80%, like my self-esteem was at 80%. Like I always felt pretty good. Like it didn't matter what weight I was or whatever. I always felt pretty good about myself, mostly. And then after I found out about the affair, my marriage just blew up. It went to 0, and like complete 0. negative, probably even. And for many, many years, it took all those years, as recounted in the book, to like climb out of that hole and like not continually put myself in a situation where, you know, who said it, man? Like, you accept the love you think you deserve.
Yeah.
There's some.
Was it
Is
Maya?
that Maya Angelou?
Maybe.
I think so. Or Oprah. Or Maya Angelou to Oprah.
To Oprah, saying it to Oprah.
Yeah. But or Oprah saying it back to Maya Angelou, like, you know what I mean? The point is, like, yeah, I think that I had this romanticism about tumultuous love, and I romanticized the pain of it and the drama of it.
Right.
And it's not to say that the love I felt wasn't real love or whatever, but I think there was a tendency to romanticize and to think that if something felt good and just was nice, then that wasn't love. And I definitely now know that when something is nice and someone wants the same things as you and you just have a really great time together and there's not a lot of discord, like, that's great. That's nice, which is the situation I'm in now. So it doesn't feel, I don't feel that way, like that it has to be cranked to maximum for it to be actual love. There's something really nice about just feeling nice.
Yes. Yeah, there's something nice about love that doesn't drag you around by the hair half the time. You know? Yeah. Good. I'm happy for you. I'm happy for you and your love.
Good. I'm happy for me and my love. I'm happy for you and your love. I mean, we all got there.
Thank you.
We got there.
We got there. I know. It didn't feel like we were ever going to get there, but we got there. So where does your creative soul take you next? What's the next?
Yeah, it's weird because it's like 7 straight years of this.
Yes.
And I'm pretty over it, you know, in some ways, where I'm like, oh my gosh, ready. Actually, I've been writing a book of short stories for, I don't know, the past 6 months, maybe a year. And I'm very excited about that. And I don't know what will happen with it, but anyway, I get a lot of pleasure out of writing these short stories. And so I'm just always doing that. And then, you know, I have a day job.
Of course you do. You have a life and a day job.
Yeah. So, but I'm always writing, for sure.
Right. Yeah. And you're always creating. You go write a song. You gotta write some song. You're a creator, man. You're an
sew a lot.
And you sew. You sew and
I make things.
You draw. You make stuff. You're crafty.
I'm crafty.
So what I need in the next little while, I need the album. I need the clothing line.
Yeah, no.
You're supposed to be super creative during the time of the COVID, apparently.
Yeah.
So you got time.
Releasing a book is a lot.
I think that's a lot. I think that's tons. That's tons. Is there anything to say to those that are, you have grappled with lonely, you've grappled with alone, people are grappling with it now. Do you have any wisdom around that you want to share as we wrap this up?
No, I wish I did. I think the truth is, like, I'm always surprised when I get emails and messages from people who are like, oh, I just felt like a piece of shit and everything was the worst. And I just keep listening to your podcast over and over again, and it helps me not feel alone. And so, and I think, how does listening to me whine and complain like help these people? Because it's not like there's a lot of solutions in the book or the podcast. You know what I mean? Like in this story, it's just like me grappling with it, really, and trying to like figure out a way to transcend the pain or the romanticizing of pain or the grief. And I don't know that there's a lot of solutions in it. It definitely ends before, you know, I found like a real happiness with a partner. Like the book ends for that. And even before, but I mean, at the end of the book, I am sort of like getting to the point where I'm okay to be alone, where I want to go home. Like all those things really did happen when they did happen. And so that, I guess I can offer people like what people told me at the time is that like, you're actually not in isolation. Like, I mean, now we physically are in isolation, but your feelings aren't. Your feelings are not in isolation. So I think there's a tendency to think that whatever horrible way you're feeling or the thing that you did, which was maybe a bad behavior as a result of a bad thing happening to you, that you're the only one who did that terrible thing, whatever. And it's not true. Like everybody has the similar thing. Like we are actually all in this together. And like I keep saying that, but I really do believe it. I do believe in that we're all like connected. And that's why the specifics don't matter so much, you know?
Yeah.
And I do think, I guess, there's always that like undercurrent of hope through the book.
It is so hopeful. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's just how I am always. Even when oh my gosh, the second or third day after the bomb, when we were at work and we were in your office actually, right? At CBC, me and you and our friend.
So I should explain that the bomb is the moment in which it's exposed to you that your ex-husband has been having an affair.
Yeah. And when that happened, I think it was like 2 or 3 days later, and I was at work like in a daze and whatever. And then we went into your office. And it was you and I, because you were the only person who had an office at that time, and our friend Inaba, and I was just crying and crying and crying or whatever, and you guys were like blah, 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 blah. And then I said something, and I wish I could remember what, and it made you guys like, it was like this huge laugh. And then Nava said, "Man, you're gonna be fine because you are at the bottom of a hole right now, and you still had time to like crack a Michelle joke, and you guys, you were dying laughing at whatever I said." And so that's just me. Like, you know, there's a part in the book and the podcast where I'm like, I'm the saddest optimist. You know what I mean? Like I'm always hopeful, even when I'm so sad. She says, she doesn't remember anything. Nava can never write a memoir because she remembers nothing.
Oh my goodness. I'm so proud of you.
Stay hopeful. That's what I say.
Stay hopeful. It's all about the hope, man.
Yeah.
Thank you for writing this. I really do think that this is you, and I keep saying it, and your superpower on full display. And it is just, I feel fortunate to be getting a bit of a halo effect off your shine. It's good. It's the good stuff.
Thanks.
It's delicious.
Do you want to see what it looks like, everybody? I mean, you've all seen it, but
it's so nice. Look at it.
So beautiful.
Look at you. Look at all of it. It's so good. We got to thank some people.
Yeah, let's thank the people.
Can I thank Hannah Sung and Nanaba Duncan, who, you know, we've been trying to figure out how to make a launch happen, and you know, and been talking about it for so long, and they're just such great media girlfriends.
10 seconds.
Oh my gosh, I have 10 seconds. Oh my gosh.
Canada Performs. Thank you, Canada Performs. Okay. Hi, we're back just to say thank you, because we didn't realize that we had a time limit. You can't put a time limit on Garvia Bailey and Michelle Parise.
You cannot.
You can.
No, you can't. Have you ever tried to tame a wild colt?
This is 2 wild colts.
This is 2.
2 of them. And they're over 40, so they don't give a shit.
We really don't. We don't. But we do. What we give is these folks. We need to thank these people.
Let's thank them.
The National Arts Center and this Canada Performs initiative, which is fantastic for making this happen.
Yeah.
Facebook, Slate Music, the RBC Foundation, Sirius XM Canada. Of course, we have to thank Dundurn Press, fantastic. Yes. Your editors, Media Girlfriends, and everyone for tuning in and picking up the book. Now you can order it from your local bookstore. All of those ones that are delivering, your little mom and pop shop, there's a lot of them that are delivering now. If you like a big box store, you can get it at Indigo or at Walmart as well.
Amazon.
Amazon. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. Alone. Don't be alone. Just read alone.
I want to thank some people too.
Please do.
I want to thank my makeup artist. I'm just kidding. I don't have a makeup artist. I want to thank my agent, Samantha Haywood, and everyone at Transatlantic. I want to thank everyone at Dundurn Press. So Lisa Marie Smith, Elhan Ali, Catherine Lane, Laura Boyle, who designed this cover.
Yeah,
Laura
gorgeous.
Boyle. Beautiful. Stephanie Ellis, Elena, Kendra, probably all kinds of people I'm forgetting. All the ladies of Dundurn Press. It seems like it's only ladies. And then to all my media girlfriends for being the line. So Magarbi Bailey and Nava Duncan, Hannah Sung, Jen Hollett, Rachel Giza, Rachel Harry, Nam Kiwaniga, and Saroja Coelho. His name I just said wrong.
I don't think you did. I think you did okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, and like all of our friends and everyone, thanks for supporting this book and for being so excited about it. And thank you, National Arts Center. So that's it.
Bye,
this
everyone.
This is our second live to say thank you.
Thanks,
you, guys.
Bye.